warm welcome to you all. Hope you'll thoroughly enjoy our programme.
Oh, hello.
It's the Reel Britannia podcast, a very British podcast about very British movies with just a hint of professionalism. Good morning, Scott here. It's time for a Bond movie. It's been years since we've reviewed a Bond movie, so joining me, as always, is my dear friend Stephen. Good morning.
Morning, mate.
Morning. We've got a very special guest back for a second time, the Fool. It's Hal from the Couple Indemnity podcast. Welcome back, mate. Welcome.
Hello, Scott, and hello, Stephen. Yeah, thank you for having me back on to talk about one of the Bonds that I always think gets slightly forgotten about or swept onto the carpet. So looking forward to getting into it.
Yes, I've got a theory about this as well, you know, and I've got certain thoughts and feelings about this one. It's Bond number 4.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thunderball. I'll tell you what, we're going to go straight into it. Let's play the trailer. We'll be back after this.
I think you got the point. James Bond is in operation. And what an operator he is in Ian Fleming's Thunderball. Have you seen everything you came to see? Now go back to your friends and report. Tell them the little fish I throw back into the sea. Bravo! Thunderball stars Claudine Auger. Young, beautiful, trapped. Could be dangerous.
What sharp little eyes you've got.
Wait till you get to my teeth. Adolfo Celli, smooth, silent. Spectre's agent of death. Luciana Paluzzi, lovely to look at, murderous to know. Friends of yours, no doubt. Come in. 007, danger sign of the world's most famous gentleman agent with a license to kill and license to thrill. 007, guarantee sign of prompt delivery, night and day service. Ravishing redheads. Bronze brunettes. Honey blondes. The Bond women 007 style. Hallmark of today's greatest entertainment.
Thunderball, released in the UK in 1965, directed by Terence Young, starring Sean Connery, Claudine Auger and Adolfo Celli. The plot, the briefest of summaries, as always on IMDb, just says that James Bond heads to the Bahamas to recover 2 nuclear warheads stolen by Spectre. Agent Emilio Largo in an international exhaustion scheme. An extortion scheme. Let's stick with that. Bond number 4, right now. Hal sort of said this is an underseen or a forgotten Bond. I think this was always the case until fairly recently. I think its merits have been sort of recognised in recent years, in particular the underwater sequences.
Yes.
But I think, this is my theory, and you can argue with me against this, guys, as much as you want. I think it's a victim of its own success because of the superior previous movie, Goldfinger. It had a lot to live up to, and the movies are progressively getting better and better. Dr. No was great. From Russia with Love was superb. Goldfinger, blimey, ultimate Bond. You know, we've got it now. We've got the format. We've got everything in place. And then what happened with this? We get this protracted 30-minute sequence at the health farm at the beginning. We get some very extended underwater fighting scenes. It sort of loses the pace a little bit. And I think when it was started to be screened in the 70s and 80s on the TV, it's like, oh, God, it's Thunderball. That's not my favourite. I think that was what people's attitudes were.
Yeah, I would agree with that mostly. I would say that when I was younger, being a Bond lover, Thunderball was fairly low on my overall sort of love for Connery being one of my favourite Bonds as well. Thunderball was on the lower echelon of the favourite Bonds. And the underwater sequences do have something to do with that, because I think a quarter of the film, of the whole running time, is filmed underwater. And some of those action sequences are incredibly extended and protracted, as you say. I think I went quite a while of not watching the early Bonds for, over a number of years. And I rewatched it, I think 3 or 4 years ago, and revisited it and kind of refound a bit of a love for it. And I rediscovered a love for those scenes that I thought were a bit long and a bit boring at the health farm and underwater, and just thought these are incredibly interesting to watch. One of the things I think really carries the underwater sequences, I think, is the music. John Barry's score that's going on is really kind of special. There was a documentary made that I think Amazon released a couple of years ago called The Sound of 007. And it really kind of paid tribute to the history of all of the Bond scores, and particularly all of the John Barry's genius, really, in composing these special scores that are specifically related to those action sequences and capturing the mood of them. And watching that documentary, it charted all of the Bonds over the years and the different kinds of music. But it really gave me kind of helped me rediscover a love for this film, really, not only the music, because even in those early health farm sequences, there's a very, very interesting sort of mysterious score going on underneath them. When Bond's sort of investigating and walking around the health farm, following the spy for Spectre, it's brilliant. And I think I enjoy it more and more the more I revisit it. Yeah,
it's become a bit of a favourite for me. I rediscovered it about 8-9 years ago, and I'm thinking, well, why don't people love it? It's not actually that bad. Stephen, your thoughts, mate?
I think it's a victim of its own success as far as commercially it was obviously brought the money in. The idea of where a film franchise was going, and they needed to, on the success of the previous one, needed to go big, and the way they've done that is go a bit more epic and have the extended scenes as far as fight scenes, but also making them underwater and such like. I think was a pitch to try and impress and get bigger than previous, but there is, I think, a criticism at the fact that it's very reliant upon gadgets, it's very reliant upon those fight scenes, and certainly the characterization of Bond that we maybe got earlier there's not so much there as far as there's remarks made about the character almost from the outside, with people taking a stab or making a commentary about the womanizing or not being beaten in a fight or whatever. But I think that actually developing the character is maybe they've taken it as far as they can at that point, which makes him a bit more wooden. They haven't actually invested a bit more into that side of it, and it becomes a series of sequences in a way. But they have gone bigger. They have gone to impress, and because I think it's got the extended runtime as well, because it is longer than the previous ones. I think that is why people maybe don't revisit it as much. And like Al said, the fight sequences, and particularly with being underwater. I mean, granted, if you're throwing a punch underwater, it takes longer for it to actually land because of the how long it takes to do things underwater. But if you changed all the fight sequences to be normal speed that there would be if they were throwing a punch on land, then maybe it might change the runtime significantly. But there's a lot with this though that's introduced some of the bits that the format has been introduced previously and elements have been introduced. I think this has got some bits that maybe are the ones that have become parodied more, and that's why some people might not see this as being the one to list as their favourite, because it's perhaps one of the ones that's most parodied. I mean, yes, okay, previously we had the villain in a hollowed out volcano, but this one, I mean, the jetpack, you've got one of the villains killing off one of their underlings by pressing a button and the seat collapsing and dumping them in, shark infested pool for people to be devoured in,
like with an eye patch,
bloke with an eye patch, absolutely. There's a lot of things that are taken off, and obviously, particularly Austin Powers, I think this was one that was a big influence on those parody elements that have been not just Austin Powers but other ones. This had reached a point where that's where there was the parodiable elements, and that's why some other people might go, oh well, I'm not going to list that was my favourite, because people pick at it almost in that sense.
It is a bit pantomime villain. We're getting into the sort of the era of the pantomime villain now, because you think about, okay, Dr. No, evil Asian guy with fake hands, but there was no main villain from Russia with Love. We saw Blofeld, from the neck down.
And it was more the henchman, really, wasn't it? With Robert
Shaw, exactly. Yeah. And then we get the great villain in the shape of Goldfinger.
Oh yeah.
And then obviously this one, as you're saying, it's then parodied with the eye patch and all of that sort of stuff. And then Blofeld, we see him properly in the next one. But all the elements are there. I mean, I think they found the format by Goldfinger. By Goldfinger, we'd got everything in place. Q, for example, makes his first proper appearance in Goldfinger. And then it's nice to see him in the field, and complaining. He becomes the Q that we love, because he becomes the gropey, now listen, 007, I want these all back in one piece Q, he's him.
Yeah.
Whereas before he's been sort of Major Boothroyd, hasn't he? Just the quartermaster.
Yeah.
The one-liners, we had a few of those previously, but I think this is the one where they start ramping up the cheesy Bond one-liners after a kill.
They're a bit more forced, aren't they, really? Some of them.
Yeah. It's funny, actually, that one where he's walking out of the room when he's had the mink glove on with the physiotherapist, and he goes, "See you later, irrigator." And I thought, I always used to think that he had said alligator when I was young. It was only on the watch a few years ago that I realised he'd said irrigator.
He's late to the briefing, and if I remember correctly, he says something along the lines of, "Oh yeah, some people on the road now really blow you up," which "cut you up" is a phrase we use if somebody on the road, but blow you up, maybe it was more of a phrase back then, but certainly you're thinking, you're stretching there to try and get something to be a one-liner, which maybe isn't for the best. But then it becomes, again, that's a parodied element in future as far as the one-liners, and not just in the spy stuff but elsewhere, where even in some of the Marvel films where they're sort of saying, "Oh, you missed it earlier on when I did this and I said this afterwards," sort of thing. It definitely is there's parody elements, and the one-liners is part of that, absolutely.
Also possibly the worst toupee so far as well. It went very black. It's got very dark all of a sudden, the hair.
And another thing I did notice about Connery when you look at him is that you realise how quickly he ages throughout his time as Bond. And like from how young he looked as Dr. No only 3 years earlier.
Suddenly, he's like,
And I think You Only Live Twice was 67, so that was 2 years after this. And he looks like he's aged 10 years, not 5 years, like in that space.
but
And
you know the surprising thing, Hal, as well? He's still younger than Roger Moore.
I know, yeah, he aged very quickly, Connery. For me, he's my favourite, along with Pierce Brosnan. And that's not a popular opinion. That's just, I always think they did the best films, and they combined the charm with kind of that just pure characterization so well. But I think that Connery could have done more, but I don't think he enjoyed it that much. He didn't enjoy the limelight that it carried the longer it went on, and he didn't. Of course, he would have been on Her Majesty's Secret Service if he wanted to do it, but he dropped out. Don't know the reasons why he came back for A Diamonds Are Forever. I need to look that up. But
it was the $1 million payday, wasn't it? It was specifically they were going to pay him so much, but then they also were going to give him producers' rights to make 2 movies, one of which was The Offence.
Right.
And I can't remember what the other one was, but that was part of the deal, that he would get free rein to make 2 movies of his choice.
But the money obviously was also an incentive. Yeah, it's the whole what first attracted you to the millionaire, Paul Daniels.
Oh yes. I think Connery was excellent in all of these, but he does age noticeably quickly. So that kind of more youthful Slighty Bond was on its way out, probably by this point. Really.
I think it is partly to do with the toupee. I think that is the fact. He wore a hairpiece in every single Bond movie.
Yeah.
And you can see that they're obviously changing. They're developing as he's getting older, or his face is changing or whatever. And this one really stood out, that he's got this jet black hair. And it's a very good toupee, I must admit. You'd really have to look to really see it. But yeah, that was the first thing that really struck out. I thought, oh, hang on a minute, what's happened? He's had a bit of a makeover, We get a pre-title sequence in this, don't we? Where is he? Is it Morocco or somewhere? I can't remember. It's the thing where he's got to blow up the factory. Am I mixing up my movies here?
There's a funeral.
You're talking about
funeral. It's the funeral.
This is the one where there's a funeral, and he's overlooking it from the balcony with
Colonel Bouvard, and he says that he'd killed a few of his colleagues. He then actually realizes that the one who's disguised herself as the widow is Colonel Boulevard, and he basically punches the widow.
Which is an Austin Powers moment, because there's an Austin Powers scene where he punches the woman at the funeral.
Yeah.
That's right. So we get the jetpack, and the DB5 comes into play with the bulletproof rear windscreen, and this time it's got water jets instead of an oil slick. Is that right?
Yes. Yeah.
It's a good pre-title sequence. It's enjoyable, and it's I've always liked the fact that the pre-title sequences often bear very little relation to the actual plot of the film that's to come. There is a slight link in this, in that I think that guy who Bond killed was a Spectre agent who they have to then investigate the death of.
And also the injury he received results in going to the health club, to the spa. Yeah,
true. Yeah.
But also with the titles is the sequence where it's the sight of the gun, the barrel, where he's walking across, and that then leading into the actual name of the film and stuff. That's the first time that really is happening in the same way as it being the actual James Bond in the sights.
Isn't that the first time it was Connery doing the imagery? Yeah,
it was the stuntman previously, whose name I can't remember. Yeah, so as I say, all the elements have all come together now. Does anybody know or want to sort of talk about the whole Kevin McClory thing?
I know a bit about it, but not a lot. Only the sort of surface level. There was the contention over the script being asked to be written, and then what was actually done. There was the contention over that being not using it, and trying to then. There was the claim that they were using elements of it, and it wasn't being acknowledged or paid for it, and therefore that went through the litigation like it did. And that's why this should have been earlier in the sequence of films, but it got delayed, and that's why it's now the fourth one, which I think originally it was either going to be the first. Was it going to be the first or the second one? I can't remember now.
It was going to be the first, because what happened, this is way before Dr. No, I think, that Fleming got together with McClory and a couple of others to thrash out a script. And for whatever reason, the script never materialised. But then Fleming used the script to write the novel Thunderball. And Kevin McClory, once the movie was being made, went, hang on a minute, half of those elements in there, Largo, the jetpack, all those, he said, they're my ideas. He said, I came up with those and you've put them in the novel, and they're now adapting the novel to make the movie. So they pretty much settled immediately, didn't they? I think something happened. They settled immediately back in the early 60s, but then it reared its ugly head again, and it ended up, this is the one that ended up being remade as Never Say Never Again, isn't it?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
And then there was even talk up to the point just before McClory died that they were going to make it through a third time. You know, it was just because McClory held the rights to it. He held the rights to that whole story, and he could use James Bond. He could use the name James Bond because he wrote it.
Maybe that ties into what we were saying before about this not being on streaming in the same place as the others, because there was some different rights attached to it then.
And I think on different versions throughout, you know, all its physical releases on like VHS, on DVD, on Blu-ray, as the rights sort of issues sort of change, some of the logos are MGM, some are United Artists, some are whatever, and it's always just a bit of a mishmash, you know. But Kevin McClory held the rights. I think the estate still do actually hold the rights to the story, which is interesting. The only time it's happened, obviously, because, you know, this everything is under Eon Productions and all that sort of stuff. And it was I remember the summer of '83 that it went head to head, didn't it? Never Say Never Again went head to head with Octopussy, and it was the Battle of the Bonds that summer.
It's crazy. You know, I think I've only ever watched Never Say Never once. It's an odd kind of.
It's weird, isn't it? Seeing Sean Connery
so much older. And it all being sort of semi-spoof like, but I do need to rewatch it.
A lot of people prefer it to Thunderball.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Because they feel that, I was reading this while I was doing a bit of research, that they feel that the villain is more fleshed out. You know, there's some real stars in it. You know, Max von Sydow's in there as Blofeld or whoever it was, and Klaus Maria Brandau plays Largo, and it was Kim Basinger's big movie debut, and Barbara Carrera's the bad one, and
Edward Fox.
Was he M? I'm assuming he was M.
Yeah.
Rowan Atkinson playing the ambassador, you know, the embassy star.
Yeah.
And a lot of people preferred it, and I think it was neck and neck for a while. And I think they postponed the release so they didn't actually go head to head. But Octopussy did actually make more money, I think, in the end. It was very close. It was very.
It's funny about Bond when you consider of the sort of semi non-official Bonds, like that you almost don't want to acknowledge them, because I find Casino Royale one of the most hilariously entertaining films of all time. But it's like watching a film on LSD at times. That film.
Just makes you wonder where that was going, because it didn't have like 3 different directors all working at the same time, didn't it? On that movie.
Yeah, and that was only 2 years after this, so there was obviously in it for the money, but the stars in it are incredible.
Yeah, Orson Welles and David Niven and all that, Woody Allen. Yeah. We will include it. I think we've got to include that in the sequence, guys. If we're going to be, we're not just going to stick to the Eon stuff. I think we've got to include Never Say Never Again and that version of Casino Royale.
Yeah,
just to show what was going out there at the time, just for completionist's sake, if nothing else.
Yeah, I mean, we'll regard it as a British film, so.
Pretty much a British international, as we call them.
British international.
Yes, that's where we go. Yeah, and that's the phrase that Scott's come up with, which is absolutely golden for us to be able to sometimes slightly bend what we
Anglo-American
British film. So we can get away with it then.
Yeah. Well, particularly if the majority of the cast is British, and a lot of it probably was filmed over in this country. I don't know. I can't remember. I haven't seen it for years, but we'll include it. We'll just have to.
Mr. Bond! Mr. Bond! Oh, thank God. Thank God, you could have been killed.
I must be 6 inches taller.
Oh, you poor dear. I can't think how it could have happened. I can tell you, it's a miracle I came back when I did. I can only think that you must have pushed the switch accidentally. Well, you'd better come along with me. Spend a few minutes in the steam room. It'll help to relax you.
Yes.
Might even shrink you back to size.
Somebody's gonna wish the day had never happened.
Well, you wouldn't tell Dr. Wayne. Please. I'd lose my job.
Well, I suppose my silence could have a price.
You don't mean... Oh, no.
Oh, yeah?
Can we talk a little bit more about the beginning at the health farm?
Yes.
For me, watching it this time round, I mean, I've seen this movie a dozen times. I'm sure Stephen has. How you've seen it a fair few times, and I know you said how that you quite enjoyed looking at that health farm stuff because it is quite different. It's a build up to what's going to be coming along. And I'm trying not to be too picky with Bond films. I've got a great love for them. They're very precious to me. I don't want to pick holes. But there are some gaping plot holes in that first 30 minutes. You know, this whole plot relies on the fact that Bond is at the health farm where this plastic surgery has been going on just by coincidence. You know, it's like, what's the chances of that happening? The whole success of the stealing of the nuclear weapons is critical. It relies on the fact that plastic surgery's got to be exact. That face must be exact. You know, how good was the plastic surgery back then? I don't know. You know, I'm not saying it's far-fetched, but at the same time, I found myself going, oh, that wouldn't happen. You know?
Yeah.
So you're saying there needs to be a bit of suspension of disbelief with Bond films?
With a Bond movie, yeah. In this particular case, I just found it a bit, that really doesn't hold up. You know, normally I can watch a Bond movie and I'll accept anything and everything they throw at me. But in this one, I'm like, oh, yeah. And also Bond's attitude towards women in that particular first half an hour.
Yeah, I think you do need to mention that because when you watch it with modern eyes, I think this film, and that particularly this part of the film with the physiotherapist, it does seem the most outdated or just generally dated scene in the whole Bond series, I would say. There is that scene in Goldfinger with Pussy Galore when they're rolling around the hay, but
they answered that in this, didn't they? Because there was criticism in Goldfinger about how Pussy Galore defected instantly just after being seduced by James Bond. So there's this bit later in this movie where he turns to the Countess or whatever her name is, I can't remember her blooming name now, the redhead, and said, what I did this evening was for King and Country.
That's true. Yeah, because she, as you say, answers it, and she says, well, the idea that any woman can fall at your feet just by you saying your name. So there is that element of it, and I think that character was very strong in this film. Fiona Volpe,
that's it.
The Italian actress. I think that because that's the first time from memory that you'd seen to this point a kind of baddie female in that
didn't
part.
we work out, Stephen, there was like 3 Bond movies, 3 Bond girls per movie or something. You get the one that's linked to the villain. In this case, Claudine Auger. Yeah. You get the Bond girl that helps James Bond. So in this case, Martine Bezic, say like Mary Goodnight in The Man with the Golden Gun, you know. I'm trying to think of more examples, but you normally get a Bond girl that is associated with Bond in a romantic way or helps him to achieve his, mission. And then there's always, or sometimes, a third one.
Yeah, sometimes the third one is one that, suffers a fate that, they get killed or whatever.
Yeah, say, for example, Terry Hatcher in
Tomorrow Never Dies.
Tomorrow Never Dies, thank you. You know, she has that romantic link with him. She dies, but she's not the main Bond girl. The main Bond girl in Tomorrow Never Dies, Michelle Yeoh is the one that helps him. And it's, who's the main female in Tomorrow Never Dies?
It's Michelle Yeoh.
Oh, it is? Okay.
Who is the Chinese agent who links up with Bond later in the film. But this Fiona Volpe character, she kind of mirrors to me like an older version, a more a 60s version of the one in GoldenEye, who's the Russian girl who kills everyone in the
on the top
in the computer center, and strangles men when having
with
sex with them. Yeah.
On the top. Yes.
Fiona's a bit like that, isn't she? Really, I think. Yeah, she has that kind of temperament.
Not quite a henchwoman as such, but part of the evil side of the story. Yeah. There appears to be sort of two, sometimes three Bond girls we find as the series progresses. But she's a great character as well. She's a great character in this. I love the bit when she's in the bath and she says, "Can you get me something to wear?" and he hands her her slippers.
Yeah. The trouble is, though, absolutely, this kind of reaches a certain, again, an archetypal peak with regards to it being, you look back on it and it's to some extent the values at the time, but certainly could be argued rapey Bond, basically, accusations. I mean, certainly, like you said, using, as a bargaining chip to not get her in trouble, that she has to have sex with him and kissing people without their permission and stuff. It all becomes, okay, there's comments later on about his famed prowess and trying to put a prick in that bubble, but it doesn't reflect well on the character and all the time. I don't think that attitude is taken, and that's seen as being heroic almost.
This might be part of the reason why they started to go a lot more tongue-in-cheek with it by the time that Roger Moore came in, because if you watch all the scenes where Roger Moore's seducing Bond girls, it's a lot more relaxed, and it's a lot more sort of just almost semi-laughing and almost a bit more comical, very tongue-in-cheek. Connery is not, I'm not going to say he's forceful, but it's just a lot more.
It's
forward.
More macho, isn't it? It's more
macho and forward, yeah.
Yeah. Well, you've got something there, mate. Absolutely.
So unfortunately, I think I've often spoken to younger people who aren't Bond fans, and they always use the scene like this in this film as an example of why it's so dated. And it's hard to disagree with them, really. Yeah, again, that's one of the bits that really stood out for me. And unfortunately, it's in that first 30 minutes, and there's other stuff that's a bit troubling going on, It becomes more of a spy Bond story that we know and have learned to love over the previous three once we get to the Bahamas. I mean, even the scene with M and Moneypenny is very short in this one. Even though it's become a regular part of the sequence now, it's not dwelt on at all, is it? The old M Moneypenny interaction between the three of them.
Code name? Thunderball. As you can see, we've very little to go on. All the members of the crew had top security clearance. You'll find their photographs and service records in your files. You'll be working with NATO, CIA, and all Allied intelligence units. Well, that's all, until you discuss your individual assignments with me. I've assigned you to Station C, Canada. Group Captain Pritchard here will be your Air Force liaison.
Sir, I respectfully suggest that you change my assignment to Nassau.
Is there any other reason, besides your enthusiasm for water sports?
Perhaps this, sir. Well, there was a photograph of that man in this dossier you gave us. His name is Duval. Well, I saw him last night at Shrublands, but he was dead.
Oh, no, sir, not possible. He was seen boarding the Vulcan, took off last night.
If 007 says he saw Duval last night at Shrublands and he was dead, that's enough for me to initiate inquiries.
Oh, well, yes, sir, of course.
Who is this girl?
Duval's sister, sir.
Do you know where she is now?
Nassau.
Do you think she's worth going after?
I wouldn't have put it quite that way, sir.
You've only got 4 days, 007. Don't spend your time sitting around.
No, sir. I won't.
Good luck.
Thank you, sir.
Smashing figure. I don't suppose that has anything to do with your request.
Was there ever a man more misunderstood?
Now, James, you can't pull the wool over my eyes. You may be able to calm the old man, but I know better.
So do I, Miss Moneypenny. And I'll thank you not to refer to me as the old man.
Moneypenny and M seem a lot frostier in this film, don't they? Because doesn't he overhear her saying something about him in the office?
The old man.
On the intercom.
The old man.
Yeah. Yeah. But I think Bernard Lee played it like that, didn't he? He played it as very, very officious.
Yeah.
And stern. That was his style. I know they carried that on with the ministers in the later Roger Moore ones.
But at the same time, you get the feeling that M, particularly Bernard Lee's portrayal of M, will back James Bond no matter what. I think there's a scene in this or Goldfinger where he says, if Bond says that happened, that was it. If Bond says he saw him, I believe him. That was it.
He sticks up for him. Yeah, definitely.
There's a respect for how good an agent he is and what results he gets. But on the other side of it, still is the chafing against the way in which he books authority, or he's challenging him straight away, saying he thinks he should be sent to Nassau, and he has to say, is that, just sort of tries to shoot him down by saying it's not just because your liking for water sports, which let's hope that isn't a reference to something else, but it's that's him almost trying to put him in his place, but then he switches the other way once he's got the evidence to do so, which shows the dynamic of the relationship. I think that there's respect there, but also I'm still in charge approach.
I also just wanted to mention, you when you said Claudine Auger, I read that, and it's strange to read this and how different it would have been, but the casting of her, and the fact that the producers, Broccoli and Saltzman, had initially spoke to Julie Christie and Raquel Welch to play the role, and also Faye Dunaway, I'd read as well.
I could see that.
I was aware of Raquel Welch, yeah.
I think Julie Christie was the first one they'd spoken to, and I don't think that they thought that she had the sex appeal to play it.
Which is strange, because she was, the face of the, that mid-60s period, Darling and all of that sort of stuff that she appeared in.
It does seem odd. I mean,
she would have been an ideal Bond girl. Oh, absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, Raquel Welch, I think, would have had the appeal, but I don't know if she'd have been as good as, in terms of acting, as Faye Dunaway would have been.
Yeah, she's more sort of your Ursula Andress type character, isn't she? I can see her being used in that respect.
To be in a bikini, basically.
Yeah, that's how they would use her. Yeah, absolutely.
You're listening to the Reel Britannia podcast, a very British podcast about very British movies, with just a hint of professionalism.
I keep going back to the troubling aspects of this rather than the best bits. Animal cruelty in this. That shark has obviously been killed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there's another scene, I think, a little bit later on where you see a harpoon or something clip the gills of one of them as well.
Yeah.
And it's frightening to think that, we've already talked about the attitudes towards sex at this time, but also, towards animals. It's like, well, it wasn't until like the mid-80s that they really sort of clamped down on that sort of thing.
And frighteningly, can't guarantee that was done in one take. So it might not have been the only animal killed or wounded. They might have gone through several or dozens in order to get the shot that they wanted. And that doesn't leave another bit of distaste in the mouth.
Again, it's of its time. We keep saying this. It's of its time, and to modern audiences, I can imagine like somebody, I don't know, in their 20s or whatever, they're being absolutely horrified by some aspects of this when they watch it. They wouldn't last the pace, actually. They wouldn't even stick it through to the end. I'm sure most of them would have switched off halfway through the health farm scene.
Yeah, and I think particularly younger women, I don't think it's necessarily something that carries over to the modern Bonds, because I think they've addressed it more, and quite rightly as the mores of society have changed and it's been addressed. But certainly a younger female coming to Bonds and deciding to start at the beginning to see what the fuss is about, and then immediately seeing what they're seeing in the first couple of them, I don't think they'd ever get through to the more recent ones to be able to see that it moved with the times. They'd just go, well, that's insulting and disgusting, and they wouldn't touch it then. It was a state of the times, rightly or wrongly. I think wrongly, but certainly we see it in so many films from the past, the attitudes towards women or animals or whatever, or race, and get people blacking up and
I think also I've shown Izzy my couple on partner on Couple Indemnity. We've done a couple of the Connery Bonds before we started the podcast, but we will be doing them in order for the show. I'll plug that later, but I think it's also an element of the part of the female as well, and how they kind of adore Bond in that way. So if they fawn at his feet, that's seen as a thing of just being like, oh, James, and just the way that Moneypenny is around him. And you see that by the time that well, certainly by the time we got to the late 80s Bonds, you had far more interesting female characters being written who didn't just fawn at his feet when he turned up. And I think that's an element that younger audiences and female audiences appreciated more as Bond evolved.
Right, Hal, you mentioned the music and how much it plays such an important part in this.
It does.
Stephen, you're going to mention the fact that you're Mr. Barry link?
Yeah, I mean,
fellow Yorkshireman.
John Barry, yes, from York, which is where I'm from. And when I was younger, I not close friends, but I was friends with his niece to meet up with at gigs and have chats with and stuff. So I used to bump into her regular. Yeah, so fellow citizen of York, yeah, John Barry.
Yeah. We love mentioning John Barry. John Barry is... I'm in the middle of scripting a Rainbow Valley on John Barry at the moment. I'm calling it the man who... What was I calling it? The man who created the soundtrack to the 60s or something like that, because his music was just so prevalent throughout that decade, and it is very recognisable as well. You can recognise a John Barry soundtrack from the sweeping strings and all that stuff that, you know, goes with his compositions. It's the third one, isn't he? He did From Russia With Love and Goldfinger. Now, originally, the song Thunderball was going to be called Mr. Kiss Kiss Bang Bang. Right, now, if you heard that song, because that often appears on Bond compilation albums, the theme tunes, Mr. Kiss Kiss Bang Bang. I think by Dionne Warwick recorded it.
Yeah.
But also, I think Shirley Bassey was brought back to record it. Oh, there we go. I've just found it here. The song was recorded by Shirley Bassey, was later re-recorded by Dionne Warwick. The version was not released until the 90s. They removed it from the title credits because Saltzman and Broccoli were worried that the Bond film would not work if it didn't have the title of the film in its lyrics. Tom Jones, brilliant choice. You know, if you're going to have Shirley Bassey in the one before, let's have Tom Jones in this one. Great choice.
Did you read, Scott, that apparently the report or the legend of Bond is that he fainted in the recording booth when he was singing that final note?
Yeah.
Holding on to it.
Basically what happened, I think he said he closed his eyes as he was singing the last note, and as he opened, the whole room was spinning, basically, and it nearly knocked him out completely. And it is a powerful note at the end of that Thunderball. And again, we've got Maurice Binder's titles as well, you know, because Dr. No was just the dotted sort of like circles that started. From Russia With Love, not so much. Goldfinger definitely had those excellent titles of Maureen Nolan, wasn't it? What was her name? Margaret Nolan. Yep. And then all the projection of the movie onto her in the gold hue, and this is just an extension of that, and it becomes the Bond titles that we're going to be more familiar with as it progresses. I love it. Is it where does that stand as a Bond theme, guys? Is it a Shirley Bassey for you? Is it a great one, or is it just a middling sort of Bond theme?
No, for me, in terms of Bond themes, it's up there. It's definitely up there for me. I think it's a great. Even just not only Tom Jones's voice, but the power of the whole song is tremendous. I would say it's up in my top six or top five Bond themes of all time. Yeah,
absolutely. Johnny Cash apparently submitted a song to Eon Productions called Thunderball, but it went unused. Johnny Cash, can you imagine that?
Not really.
No.
Oh
yeah. I also just coming away from the music, when I was talking about casting, I also read, and Stephen will probably mention it on the Hall of Fame, but I only realised on this watch that Earl Cameron has a small part in it.
Yes,
as the local agent on the island for MI6.
How can we forget Earl Cameron? We mentioned Earl Cameron, didn't we, Stephen, in Sapphire, amongst other movies, and we always forget that he appeared in a bloody Bond movie.
Earl Cameron, we celebrate him as we know that he was Pool of London as well, but there was a number of them that iconically was in the same way as Sidney Poitier, I think, but lesser known, that he was really good for the way that he changed the perception of black people in film. But yeah, having appeared in this, I think just put him up there and establish him in a different way that I don't think always gets recognised.
And we're not doing a separate James Bond annex to the Hall of Fame, are we?
No.
No. You've got enough on your plate. That's fine. Just checking. Couldn't remember.
It'd be a secret bunker, wouldn't it? Or something, or a volcano lair or something like that instead.
A volcano lair in the grounds of the village hall.
In the grounds of the Hall of Fame, yeah.
Okay, the Village Hall of Fame, where anybody that's been 3 times or more on the show will get inducted. We've got a lot of famous faces and familiar faces here, and there's one in particular I'm going to talk about. But Stephen, as the curator of the Village Hall of Fame, please open up the doors and let us know what's going on inside, mate.
Right, well, we started off with a cast of 106 people. As it happens, the number of people who have made at least now with this 2 appearances is 50. So considering there's a lot of people in this that are international players, shall we say, who didn't play with anything else that was British, particularly Italian, because originally this was going to be the Mafia rather than Spectre, so they cast a lot of Italian people, and when they changed it to Spectre, they still kept the same players. We do have 11 people making their second appearances. I can rush through those without any. Neville Becker, who was in The Rebel, Anthony Blackshaw, Ipcress File, Michael Culver from Wish You With Love, Guy Dolman, Ipcress File, Barbara Jeffers from Wish You With Love, Philip Look Back in Anger, Lloyd Records, Sapphire, Jeanette Rousseau from Russia With Love, Bill Sawyer, Goldfinger, Paul Statino, Tiger Bear. We expect him to be one of the Italian ones, but no.
Yeah, Paul Statino.
Tiger Bear. And Jaron Yalton was Northwest Frontier, of all things. But on from there, people are actually getting their proper seating in the Hall of Fame by virtue of getting 3 appearances. We have 9.
Really?
Yeah.
No.
Victor Beaumont was Guns of Never Run and Reach for the Sky. Earl Cameron, Pool of London and Sapphire. Really good to get in.
Excellent.
Yeah, well deserved of that. Tom Clegg, Carry On Regardless and Private Progress. Harold Coy, Dunkirk and Night to Remember. So we've got one already. Night to Remember. Ronald Culver, his Dead of Night and Holly and the Ivy. Jack Gwilm.
Yeah.
Man of the Moment, Northwest Frontier, Neil Hallett, Melody and Next to the Unknown, Harold Sanderson, Dr. No, Night to Remember, and Terence Young, the director, was Dr. No, and from Wish You With Love.
Okay, so they're all inducted. There's 3 appearances.
So they're now finally getting inducted, yeah. So as far as people who have already been inducted, we have 6 people who are making their 4th appearance. Anthony Dawson, Dr. No from Wish You With Love and Tiger Bear, Hilda Green from Wish You With Love, Heavens Above, Please Sir, John Kettingham, Carry On Sergeant from Wish You With Love, Night to Remember, Roy Lansford, 10 Willington Place, Frenzy, and Sweeney, ! Eric Price, Big Job, Dunkirk, Quatermass, and Nikki van der Zil, Dr. No, who she actually does the voices, does the ADR voiceovers on here rather than actually appearing in it in person. Dr. No from Wish You With Love and Goldfinger, so she's very much in the Bond camp, having done all of those.
Oh, okay, because I've got another one of those voice actors that you may mention coming up.
We'll see where we cross over with that one then. 5 people making their 5th appearance.
Yeah.
Joe Beckett, Carry On Regardless, Heavens Above, Legal Gentleman. Reginald Beckwith, who again is somebody from York.
Yes.
Big Job, Curse of the Demon, Genevieve, Scott of the Antarctic. Bill Cummins, Man of the Moment, Night to Remember, Private Progress and the Rebel. Jack Dearlove, Admiral Crichton, Carry On Nurse, The Long Arm and Night to Remember. And Robert Wrighty, Dr. No, Frenzy, Guns of Navarone and Matter of Life and Death.
Can I stop you there? Robert Wrighty, he is the voice of Largo.
Yeah.
And he also played the voice of, I think, Blofeld in From Russia With Love. He's that famous voice that you hear overdubbed on loads and loads of movies. He also appeared in Never Say Never Again.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Just a little connection there. Yeah.
7 people making their 6th appearance. Michael Brennan, Brighton Rock, Dunkirk, 3 Hats for These, Trouble in Store and Up in the World. Peter Burton, Dr. No, The Long Arm, Night to Remember, Reach for the Sky, Train of Events. Pat Judge, Dad's Army, Dr. No, Ipcress File, Heavens Above, Theatre of Blood. George Leach, Dr. No, Eagle Has Landed, Goldfinger, Night to Remember, Pirate's Progress, Lois Maxwell.
Of course.
Yeah.
Dr. No from Russia with Love, Goldfinger, Lolita, and Matter of Life and Death. Eric Paulman, who we recognise from plenty of things, archetypal foreign.
Carry On Spine.
Carry On Regardless. He does appear in that later on. Carry on Regardless, Constant Husband, From Russia with Love, Reach for the Sky, and Third Man. And Bob Simmons, Dr. No from Russia with Love, Goldfinger, Guns of Navarone, and Night to Remember.
Okay. Take a breath, sir. Take a breath. You're okay. You're doing well. You're doing well.
That way through. Two people with 7 appearances. William Baskerville, rather than Baskerville. Carry On Constable, Cruel Sea, Gideon's Day, Man Who Never Was, Night to Remember, and Pirate's Progress. And Desmond Llewellyn, 7 appearances for Curse of the Werewolf, From Russia with Love, Goldfinger, Lavender Hill Mob, Night to Remember, and Sapphire. Policeman in Sapphire. 3 people, 8 appearances, which includes Bernard Lee, who did Dr. No, Dunkirk, From Russia with Love, Goldfinger, Last Holiday, Third Man, and Whistle Down the Wind. Pat Ryan, From Russia with Love, Heavens Above, Legal Gentleman, The Long Arm, Sweeney exclamation marks, Trouble in Store, and Yield to the Night. And Pearl Walters, Constant Husband, Dr. No, Frenzy, Legal Gentleman, Man of the Moment, Night to Remember, and Up in the World. So
okay,
there's some names that we haven't mentioned yet that we will actually recognise.
I'm looking at them now. I know where we're going.
So 2 people making their 9th appearances, one of which is Sean Connery. I'm sure you've heard of him.
I've forgotten all about. Okay.
Dr. No from Russia with Love, Goldfinger, Hell Drivers, Man Who Never Was, The Offence, Robin and Marion, and Time Bandits. And Philip Stewart, Heavens Above, The Long Arm, Man for All Seasons, Man of the Moment, Night to Remember, One Good Turn, The Rebel, and The Reckoning.
Okay.
2 people making their 10th appearance. George Hilsden, Ten Rillington Plays, The Big Job, Dr. No, Heavens Above, Man of the Moment, Man Who Haunted Himself, Quatermass 2, Sweeney exclamation mark, and Whistle Down the Wind. And Arthur Howell, Constant Husband, Heavens Above, Long Arm, Night to Remember, One Good Turn, Quatermass 2, Up in the World, and Whistle Down the Wind, and X the Unknown. And then, finally, I shall say finally, 3 people making their 11th appearance.
Okay.
Paul Baradi, who was in Carry On Constable.
You got me there. Who was that? Sorry?
Paul Baradi.
11 appearances.
Yeah, Paul Baradi.
Why
do you not recognise?
You know Paul Baradi, Scott.
Why do we not recognise that name, guys? No. He
was one of the casino patrons. Surely you recognised him straight away when you saw him in the crowd.
Of course, yeah. Okay.
Straight away you saw him. So, Carry On Constable, Carry On Teacher, Goldfinger, Heavens Above, Man of the Moment, One Good Turn, Passport to Pimlico, The Rebel, Small World of Sammy Lee, and Trouble in Store. So you have seen him before.
Yeah, I obviously have, but I've no idea who he is. Okay.
And then the second of the 11 appearances is Pauline Chamberlain.
There's a Chamberlain in there, yes.
Brighton Rock Frenzy, Hell Drivers, The Amazing Mr. Blunden, Man of the Moment, Night to Remember, The Reckoning, Small World of Sammy Lee, Villain, and The Wicker Man. And finally, Aidan Harrington.
Yeah, not the Harrington, but it's Aidan. This is the mysterious Aidan Harrington, yes.
Trying to work out whether they're related, yes. Doctor in the House, Dunkirk, Fish Called Wanda, Frenzy, Heavens Above, The Long Arm, Night to Remember, One Good Turn, Sweeney exclamation mark, and Trouble in Store. We've certainly got a lot there. So when Hal picks the next one, he can pick something that's got a cast of 3 people in it, and that'd be great.
Please, yeah. Well, firstly, thank you again for doing that. Secondly, we've got to find a way of streamlining that, because you're going to run out of breath every time we do this from now on. We did not know what a monster we would have created. We keep saying this, but when we started the Hall of Fame, and that is just pure evidence of the scale of what's been going on over the last 8 years. Did you mention Martine Bezic?
No, because I don't think she's...
I've not seen Martine Bezic before.
I don't think so, not unless she's... I've missed her and she was in a previous Bond, but no, I don't think so.
She was in From Russia with Love.
Well, there you go.
She was on the Gypsy Woman that had to fight.
Yes, of course she was. Yeah, so she's got 2 appearances.
She's got a 2. That's fine.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah.
I also noticed there was a guy called Gary Colliano who was a Spectre agent, wondering if he's related to Bonner Colliano, who we've come across several times.
Could be, yeah.
Because it's quite a unique name. And also, Dana Broccoli appears as a dancer.
And there's also Henry Ford III, who is the grandson of Henry Ford.
Is it really him? Oh,
he it's the only film he ever did, and he just managed to get a cameo basically in there, although he wasn't playing himself. He was just there in a scene,
right?
Because of in trade off for the cars that were supplied from Ford.
Oh, right, okay, makes sense.
Yes,
looking down the list, it's just jumped out at me the name of the stuntman who I couldn't remember that does the gun barrel sequences prior to this movie. Bob Simmons. He plays Colonel Jacques Bouvard, Spectre number 6. He's in this as well, but he's not necessarily in the gun barrel.
There you go.
That's the guy that we were trying to think of earlier. Incredible. Stephen, how long did that actually take you to do, mate?
Well, this is one of the rare examples when the film was actually longer than doing the list, because it's a 2-hour film. But sometimes it does end up taking longer to do that than it does to actually watch the film. That was I think Poison Pen might have been one of the examples for that, but some of them, it takes longer. Certainly with things like Norman Wisdom's
and the carry-ons. The carry-ons definitely.
The carry-ons, they take longer because there's a multitude of people in there, the bit part players. Hammer sometimes are like that as well, because they don't tend to be 2-hour films, don't Hammer films, but they tend to have such a bucket load of these stalwarts of British cinema that we talk about. So yes, it took a little while. And as you say, streamlining, maybe once you get after the 3rd appearances, just naming the people rather than all the films they've been in.
I'm just thinking of you.
Might be easier. Obviously, I'll have it in front of me, but I don't need to be reading it out, because maybe the listing is, once I've said it, it's gone out your ear because you're the next person I'm talking about. So, but yes, it certainly does show that, as I say, 50 out of the 106 are people who've appeared in at least one other film that we've done. So that's we've been in such an international cast as well. I think that's quite a signal, when you think really.
About it, and you're not even including Ken Adam or. Did you include John Barry in that list? I don't think you did.
No, I haven't included John Barry. I haven't included like Cubby Broccoli and stuff for producers either. Which it sort of goes. I felt it kind of went without saying, to be perfectly honest. I thought every Bond is them, and because they only did Bonds really. It's you'd only be saying, they've done all the previous Bonds rather than listing anything else. It's not like you have with some of the ones that the producers from the Hammer films have been in, that there's more than just the Hammer horrors. They've done some other ones like Cash and Demand or whatever, or been involved in Reach for the Sky, I think, as well and stuff. But I think with the Bonds, it's very much the producers are the producers of the Bond, and that they've not done anything else.
Again, thank you. It's just a monumental task, mate, that you tackle head on. And as I say, I'm fully aware of all the hard work that goes into it. I'm just going to try and make that a little bit easier for you next time, mate. Not necessarily by choosing easier movies to do, but just, we just got to find a way of streamlining it for your own sake, your own sanity, if anything.
Well, yeah, I mean, at one point in the early stages of doing this, I would, sometimes do a bit of it while watching a film, depending on which film we were reviewing. But there's no way I can now, because it's such a big thing. I can't do both at the same time, because otherwise I won't actually be taking in the film as it's playing. So yes, we'll find a way, I'm sure.
What we need is some bright young computer programmer out there to come up with something. All we've got to do is tap in the IMDb name or something, and it'll just work it all out for you.
Yeah, well, I mean, if there's somebody out there, if one of our 2 listeners is that type of person, then let's go for it. But otherwise,
we might have 3 to house on this one. We'll have 3 at least.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, if he decides to listen to himself, if he's that type, then go for it. But yes. So yes, quite a few in there as far as people we've seen before, and the casting is, as I say, it just backs up. Even with the British International, we've still got people like the Harringtons and Chamberlains.
Yeah. 2 Night to Remember appearances in this one. Also, I noticed Rick Van Nutter, the 4th actor to play Felix Leiter in 4 different movies. We've had 4 different people playing him.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, didn't they always change Felix Leiter? I'm not sure if they kept any consistent actor playing him.
Roger Moore ones stayed the same for quite a while, didn't
they?
'Cause right up to License to Kill at his wedding, same actor.
Right, okay. It's actually been a few years since I've seen some of the Roger Moore ones. Like, I haven't seen Moonraker or Man with the Golden Gun for quite a long time now, so I need to rewatch them. But
but it is the same actor right throughout up to that point, as far as I'm aware. And then Jeffrey Wright takes over in the Craig era, because I don't think Felix does appear in one of the Daltons.
Yeah, he appears in Living Daylight, some of that. Yeah.
Oh, no.
007.
What a wonderful surprise.
Well, for me, too. I must say, I find this business of equipping you in the field, on the run, as it were, highly irregular. Here we have a Geiger counter. Useful and unobtrusive. The sweep hand takes the radioactivity count. It's waterproof, of course.
But of course.
Now, here's something I want you to use with special care. With special care.
Everything you give me.
Treated with equal contempt. Yes, I know, but that's an underwater camera. It takes 8 pictures in rapid succession by pressing that button there.
Is that clever?
But if you can take pictures in the dark with an infrared film, yes. Try to be a little less than your usual frivolous self, 007. Now, here's a miniature Very pistol, which fires a bright red flare, a distress signal. You should keep it on you day and night.
I resent that remark.
Yep. Look, do you mind? Now, in the event of a rebreather not being available, you can use this device. For short periods only, of course, say about 4 minutes.
Clever.
Obviously, you'll only use it as a last resort. It closes to a convenient pocket size.
That's assuming one has a convenient pocket.
Now pay attention. A recently developed harmless radioactive device.
Harmless.
Which sends out a homing signal to a special receiver.
What am I supposed to do with this?
Well, obviously, you swallow it.
Now?
Guys, I'm aware of the running time of this episode. I just want to sort of finish off. Your final thoughts, where does this sit? I mean, has your opinion changed on this movie over the years? Is it gone up or down in your estimation? Where does it sit amongst the 25 Bond movies for you?
For me, it's gone up. It's gone up a fair bit since I was a younger Bond viewer and lover. It's still fairly mid in the overall hierarchy, I would say, in the ranking. I would put it above a lot of the Roger Moore ones, and even some of the later Daniel Craig ones. But in terms of the Connery ones, I would put it under From Russia with Love, Goldfinger, and You Only Live Twice. But I would put it above Diamonds Are Forever, definitely.
I think most of the Bond movies can be put Diamonds Are Forever.
Yeah, and arguably I would say it's a bit more exciting overall than Dr. No. Dr. No is iconic for its introduction of Bond.
Yeah.
But I find the second half of Dr. No fairly weak overall.
Once they get to the island, yeah, fully understand that, mate. Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think, initial viewing it was just a Bond film. Like, I didn't have a particular hierarchy with them because I hadn't seen enough of them. And at the time I watched this, really, it was difficult to do that. I think in some ways because of seeing the archetype and the way in which the trajectory of the franchise went and how it was building in this, epicness and the gadgets and the longer form fight sequences, etc. It went up a little bit, and then in maturity I think more so it's gone down a bit just to, because of, social moral elements of looking at it and seeing as well, not just that, the way that the character of Bond, that, like we've said, with attitude towards women, but I think more so that in this one, the actual character of Bond didn't get any development. It was kind of two-dimensional in a lot of ways. It wasn't the same, and obviously I understand the previous ones, they were still building the character, but I think they did find a way with some of the later ones, and particularly the more modern ones, of actually having extra dimensions to the character than him just being this archetypal spy that doesn't actually have a character or any foibles, flaws, or other elements to him. So it's, as Hal said, it's in the middle there, really. And there's other ones you can say are better in one respect or another, and there's other ones you can say are worse in one respect to the other. So a bit there, mid, I think.
Yeah, I'm gonna agree. Mid table for me, and about 3/4 of the way down the actual Connery movies, I think. In conclusion, if anybody watches this and they are troubled by some of the elements that we've spoken about, wait till you see You Only Live Twice and the racism stuff that goes on there. Well, I won't say too much, but you've got a lot to take offence at in the next one. Hal has very kindly agreed to come back to review something else, and he's going to select a movie for us. So let's take a quick break and we'll be back after this. Okay, so that was Thunderball. Hopefully, guys, we'll get to the next one a little bit quicker than we did with this one. We've had a good 2 or 3 year break, I think, between Bond movies, and it was really good to chat about it, particularly you, Hal. Thank you so much once again, mate, for popping over today.
No worries.
Thank you. Right, your reward, sir, is to select the movie next time you are going to be with us in the next couple of months. Over to you, sir. What have we got in mind?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's a great honour, Scott, I must say, to be choosing the next one on Reel Britannia. And I've always
that's a fiver that cost us,
And I've always admired the huge variety of decades you've covered on the show. And with my love of old British film, there is a few obvious ones I could have gone for, like the next Norman Wisdom or the next Carry On, or even the next Bond, but I've gone for something a bit different, and it's something I'd only seen for the first time last year, courtesy of Talking Pictures.
Yeah.
So it's a mid-80s thriller, British thriller, with Gabriel Byrne and Greta Scacchi. It's called Defence of the Realm.
I'm aware of it.
Oh, yes, yeah.
Stephen, can you remember watching it in the early days of Channel 4? I don't think I actually saw it.
Yes, and I've seen it more recently, I think, on Talking Pictures. I think it was maybe 2 years ago. I saw it on there, and I watched it then going, I've got vague recollection of this, rather than actually going, oh, yes, I do properly remember it. So I think having a proper watch of it for the podcast now that you've brought it up, I think is a real good shout.
Yeah. I don't think I actually saw it at the time. I don't think I've actually watched it.
No, it was released in 1986.
Round about, I don't know if Hal's aware, round about Stephen's well aware of this, that my stepfather's video piracy era. So that would have been in one of his suitcases at the time.
Oh, nice, yeah.
There's a massive cast. Scottish actors, lots of Scottish actors in this.
Yeah, a big British cast who kind of from the era before that and the era following that, who went and did a lot of TV and film in the 90s. Yeah.
We've got Robbie Coltrane, Ian Bannon's back in there, Stephen. He's
Ian.
Frequent flyer for us. Thornton Mackay, who we've seen a few times. Wow. Okay, the synopsis: a reporter named Mullen stumbles onto a story linking a prominent member of Parliament to a KGB agent and a near-nuclear disaster involving a teenage runaway on a US Air Force base. Has there been a government cover-up? Has there been a government cover-up? Mullen teams up with Vernon Bayliss, an old hack, and Nina Beckham, the MP's assistant, to find out the truth. I take it you're recommending this as a good movie for us to watch then?
Yeah, I was very impressed with it. I must say, on Talking Pictures, it's very fast-paced, but very exciting, and it's not overly convoluted or anything like that, whereas a lot of political thrillers can sometimes get caught up in being. I was hooked by it, so I've only watched it once, so I'm looking for, this will be a second rewatch for me, so I'm looking forward to it, and I thought it might be a good chance to talk about it with you guys.
Well, we love the 80s stuff. We love those sort of Channel 4, Film 4 type movies. I'm assuming it was. I'm pretty sure it was. One that I haven't seen, first time watch. Brilliant, absolutely.
Oh, brilliant.
Yeah. Well done, sir. Thank you.
Well, Talking Pictures have shown it quite a lot. I've noticed they've since I first watched it, they've put it on a few times. So
yeah, they've picked up a lot of those old Film 4 ones now. So they're going through that catalogue, which is great to see, because it's not all 30s and 40s movies on Talking Pictures, as some people seem to think it is. You know, we get stuff like this, which is really good.
Definitely.
All that needs to be said before we go is, Hal, take the microphone for a couple of minutes, my friend, and let's talk about your podcast.
Oh, yes. Thank you very much. Well, so I'm part of Couple Indemnity, which is me and my partner, Izzy. We've been doing it since the summer last year, and we just went full throttle into it because since we've been together, we've just shown each other so much film from all eras, really, of various genres, and we just taken it to a creative form like this, really, and we've loved doing it. The response has been good, and we've done a lot of high profile films, and we've done a lot of like obscure stuff as well, so we really enjoy the randomness of it. Sometimes we do like a themed month, like we've done, typical like horror movies in October, Christmas movies in December, that type of thing. We're sort of on schedule. We're about 2 weeks ahead. Yeah.
Now, what can you find you're actually recording? I mean, it's easier because you are like is with Izzy, with Stephen, we have to sort of pre-book. Are we both going to be available? Do you find yourself recording as regularly as you'd like to, mate? We're
doing it about weekly. We manage for the most part. Sometimes fortnightly, if if life gets in the way. But it helps being together. I think if we were like in the same room, you guys have made a sterling job of committing to it and getting together on Skype and booking yourself in. But I think it's definitely naturally more challenging.
Stephen's answer to that, he doesn't see it as podcasting. He sees it as caring the community to make sure I'm still alive every week. That's what he does.
Yeah, so I get carer's allowance for coming in and doing this. That's an incentive. And then, on the other side, there's blackmail material keeping us to this. So, and at one point it was just because I needed the alibi in case the police ever came asking, but we're all right now.
Yeah, we're fine. We've just stuck with it. Don't ever let us put you off, mate. You keep doing what you're doing because we love your podcast. We absolutely adore it.
Yeah.
I'm glad it's been received well, and viewing listeners have gone up and up slowly, so it's nice to see the people respond to it, and I think they enjoy the kind of unpredictable nature of the films we choose. So. Yeah,
I mean, what have you got planned next couple of weeks? Can you sort of reveal?
That's a good example of it. So the one we were recording today that should be going out in a couple of weeks will be Some Like It Hot, but the one that we released today that's gone out this morning that was recorded a couple of weeks ago was probably one that you could cover for Reel Britannia, is Too Many Crooks. It's the late 50s George Cole one with Sid James. Yeah. And it's there's no sort of consistency in theme at all, really.
Excellent. And do you do the editing, mate? Is it all down to you?
Yeah, I do it. I take on that job, and it's not too bad. Like, you get quicker at it, and you pick up the trick to the trade. But it's it can be a bit time consuming as you do it. As you know, as you very well know, Scott, from balancing 4 different shows.
That some fall by the wayside for a few weeks, and this one that we're recording now, we've had a good break of nearly 2 months over Christmas and the New Year. So Stephen and I are sort of taking the ball by the horns, and we're going to crack on with a bit of editing, so there'll be a little flurry of shows coming out over the next few weeks.
Lovely, brilliant.
Stephen, thank you so much for the Hall of Fame. Thank you so much for your thoughts on Thunderball, mate.
No, absolute pleasure and good to be on with Hal again.
Absolutely. Hal, thank you once again, mate. We'll see you very, very soon. Take care, guys. All the best.
Cheers, Scott. Cheers, Stephen. See you soon.
Take care.
Absolute shower. A positive shower.
Bon voyage. Good luck. Thank you.
Keeping the British hand up, sir.